Hey, what's up YouTube? Sky Badger here, and we are back on the final day of the 1v1 series. So, I recorded nearly 2 hours worth of footage for this video, so I've been able to condense it all down into roughly 12 minutes. So, that's why everything's sped up, and yeah. So, obviously this commentary is done in post. I can't talk this fast. Yeah, it just doesn't work like that. So how this video is going to work is, in the background I'm just going to show footage from the day while I talk over it and talk about how things went, stuff that's happening in the video, and reflection of how the game as a whole went. So to start with, at this point in the video, my forces have just crossed the channel and they have just arrived in the territory that my morale warfare had been able to gain for me in France. So that's what's happening there. I've also got a few aircraft weakening up fortifications and damaging some troops, and my artillery is marching forward and taking pot shots as it moves. So, you know, the old tactic of move for an hour, open fire, then during the hour cooldown, move again. So that's what's happening at the moment. You can also see that German artillery is also pounding a few of my troops, and because they're not in forts, they are getting hit hard, but compared to the damage they're going to take when they're in the forts, this is nothing. So the approach I went for on this day is march into the fortifications and try get to Paris. I'm going for kind of a rush and hit him off guard, and hit him while he's got as few troops in those fortifications as possible, and try beat him there. I'm going to take a lot of casualties, and I do take a lot of casualties, but it's better than splitting all of my troops up and hitting him across every front. So that's the sort of approach I'm going for. All I need to do is get to Paris, and even if I get to Paris and I fail, as long as I capture Paris, we're in it for the long run. So capturing Paris will destroy his goods production, and then from there it's easy going. So it's a long process and a long walk. So let's just have a think about how the game went as a whole, and you guys feel free to tell me in the comments if I could have done anything better, and what you would have liked to have maybe seen, and if you think this tactic worked in general. So we can see that before I even landed my troops, I had a lot of territory in German-occupied France, and that was just from the morale warfare we conducted. And we did that through strategic bombings, naval bombardment, and long-range railroad gun artillery. And that managed to get us a pretty big foothold in German-occupied France, and I think overall it was worth it. We have a lot of land there, and it was able to disrupt his economy massively and force him back. There were a few downsides to it, like the amount of time it took, but I feel like the amount of time it took is not really too big of a deal when you consider the results it achieved and the amount of casualties it brought with it. We lost quite a few aircraft achieving it, but compared to what a landing like this would have done, it was very successful. If we have a look down in the bottom left, we can see that there is that disembarking light tank, and those were the two light tanks I started the game with, and they're just going around to flank. They become incredibly important later on, and you'll see what I mean. So what ends up happening is, he sees this large invasion force coming down from the north, and he moves a lot of his troops to the east of his country to intercept and man the forts there. What he doesn't realize is they have those two light tanks landing in kind of the southwest, and they are ultimately what wins me the game. Although the units up in the north do the brunt of the work, the sneaky 2 level 1 light tanks are actually incredibly useful. So as you can see, once again, the artillery is firing, stopped, fire, stopped, fire. And that's what you got to do with artillery, guys, to especially make up for its slow speed. And that is one of the main disadvantages of railguns, is they are incredibly slow. So when you do get them to the front line, fire, then set them back up to move for another hour. If you don't do that, all that's going to happen is you're going to find yourself falling way behind. Now at this point, German-occupied France, or Lord Keck, knows we're there, and he sees that everything that's happening. It was bound to happen. So he's deploying some aircraft to try to deal as much damage as possible, and I'm going to deploy mine to counterattack. So what is he going to do here is he's going to send his aircraft out to bomb my units, and that is just a perfect target. Once his aircraft get there to refuel, after they've bombed the targets, we can easily knock them out. He's also got some exposed artillery, and that is a good target for our tactical bombers. So at the moment he's patrolling, and I'm sure I'd probably send a few aircraft there, but I'm also sending an aircraft down to the light tank to patrol over that to make sure they don't get destroyed, because those light tanks have no anti-air cover and they need my interceptors more. So that's how I'm prioritizing at the moment. You can see that interceptor heading down right now. Now, as he's gone into patrol mode, we can see that he's instead switched target to that tactical bomber group, and he's going in for the direct strike. Now, the issue with that is I've seen he's going in for the direct strike, so I've now launched a group of 5 strategic bombers and 5 tactical bombers to bomb the fort that they're heading back to. Because at this point in the game, he's moved all of his troops out of that fort and into the next fort along to fortify it and stop me from capturing it. When those aircraft land, they are going to have a little assistance from the fortification itself, offering them more hit points, but they're going to be stuck on the ground refueling and only have 7-ish hit points with the help of the fort anyway. So my group was able to successfully destroy those 4 artillery, and we're going to score a bunch of free hits here when those aircraft land to refuel. We can also see that that interceptor he sent out earlier to patrol the light tanks is returning. I suspected at this point that he would send any surviving tactical bombers he had to kill those flanking units, and that way he could then focus all of his troops in the north. So that's what I was thinking at that point, and I can't actually remember if it happens. So at this point in real life, I'm actually playing the 100 player game, and this game ended maybe a couple of months ago, so I'm still a little unsure about the details that actually happened and occurred in the game. So at this point again, you can see that I'm stopping a few of my artillery groups, they're opening fire, and then they're going to start moving again. So in total I have 7 groups. I have the 2 heavy groups consisting of a lot of armor, infantry, tanks, and then I have 5 artillery groups, 3 consisting of railguns, and then 2 consisting of just regular artillery, supported by a few troops to keep them defended. So oh yeah, there we can see right there, he's sending an interceptor out to stop our direct strike on his refueling aircraft, although it won't be enough, and I suspect he'll probably take some casualties direct striking that as well. So in hindsight, and thinking about the tactic we went for in this, I think we could have been more effective with a lot more artillery, and instead of marching into the forts, just killed his troops from a distance. The issue I had with that when I was planning my attack was the fact that he had a lot of artillery as well, and artillery in fortified positions can be incredibly hard to remove. And I had to keep that in mind, that he could sit in one spot and just bomb my troops, so mine would have to keep moving. And for me to build up sufficient fortifications to be on his level would be incredibly difficult. So as you can see there, my aircraft just hit, but at this point it's a little hard to tell how much damage was done. The newspaper isn't too good at updating, so we don't really know until the end, but I know for a fact that we did do some damage. We can see there as well that I just quickly put an interceptor op on a patrol mission above the fortification, where my aircraft were flying out of, or rather a runway, and that was just to stop him maybe retaliating with a direct strike as well. If I put a few aircraft op patrolling, then if he direct strikes, although I will take a lot of casualties, he'd take some as well. And that's a good point, guys. You don't want to send all of your aircraft out at once, especially when you're doing direct strikes. If you send all your aircraft out for direct strikes, once they hit, they only have one place to go back to, and that's the runway they left from. So it's often good to keep some aircraft back if you're going to do that. If you're going to patrol, it's okay, because once you're done patrolling where you are, you can patrol closer to your runway and then refuel when they don't expect you to be there. That way you avoid direct strike counterattacks on your runway, destroying your planes while they're refueling. So as you can see, at this point we have captured the first fortification. There wasn't too much resistance in that one, but as we get closer to Paris and get closer into those bigger forts, the casualties really start to rack up, and you'll see that in the hit points of my main groups as well. In the end, I end up merging the 2 groups together because they just get to the point where alone they are incredibly inefficient, and by merging them together I am able to create basically one group again. Although my artillery is still doing good as well, and I'm focusing it on the targets that are moving in between forts, so I can deal that little extra damage without having to go through fortifications. So as you can see, he's gone out for a brief patrol just to see what's out there, and there's not really too much going on. So we're going to go back to kind of reflecting on how the game went. So I think we had a pretty good strategy going into the game. I knew what I wanted to do, and I knew how to go about it, and I think that's something that really worked out well for me, is as soon as I got into the game, I was like, bang, we need to get naval superiority. Started making ports, started producing submarines, and then within, 2 days, I had naval superiority. And then, straight from there, I was like, air superiority, that's the next thing. I knew that I needed that, so within a few more days, I had air superiority as well, and at that point, it was nearly all over. There was only a one-way street, practically, between French territory, well, German-occupied French territory, that's what you said, and English territory. He could not come over, but I could. And at that point, it was basically my game already, and I was in control, and I'd taken the initiative. There was very few ways he could have taken the initiative back at that point. So I think the fact that we went into it with a plan was incredibly effective and a great idea. So as you can see here, we skipped forward quite a bit of time. What happened was that battle raged over 12 hours, and it just so happened that I needed to go to sleep, so I did. So basically what happened in the end was the light tanks I sent down to the south were able to outflank and get into the forts back there. Although only one tank made it in the end, it was enough to capture that 5 extra victory points I needed to win. So yeah, if we have a look at the VP points at the top, we can see that I had 91 victory points compared to the 90 we need to win, so I just came over. If a few more provinces had have rebelled, the fighting could have gone on for another day, but at this point, Lord Keck was out of troops completely. I think in the end he may have finished with 1 railroad gun, if he was lucky, but as we can see, I was crossing over into the remainder of his territory, and there was no chance he'd make it to the end of another day. So that's the end of the series for now. And hopefully you guys tune in within the next 4 days when I post the first episode of the 100 player series. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode.